I bet you're just dying to know how you did. Hey there. When I read student papers, I read stupidly literal and stupidly critical. And let's talk a minute about what that means. Stupidly literal means that I don't assume that I know what you're trying to do. I only go based on what's actually on there. So your intentions are something I don't even try to get into. I can only really go on the evidence that's in front of me. To the point where if I know you really meant to do these two things, but you didn't do them, I have to go on the fact you didn't do them. Just kind of how it goes. Stupidly critical, because telling you you're great and wonderful might be fun and necessary a lot of times, but in terms of writing, it doesn't really help you. If I tell you, hey, it looks good, you're given no real feedback on how you're supposed to change anything. And writing is about revision. If your Comp 1 teacher didn't tell you that, they should have. No one cares what your first drafts look like. It's all about going back and rewriting, fixing, getting stuff to where it needs to be. When we go into peer review sessions, I almost always tell people if you say looks good, it's a sign that you probably didn't actually read it. So I'm going to come across as critical, but if I'm not critical, how are you going to know what I think you need to change? And changing is a large amount of what you need to do for rewriting. Figure out what works, improve it, figure out what doesn't work, and fix it. This is all kind of a long way to say I might come across a little bit as a jerk in this video. And I'm not trying to be. I know that with a group document design battle, you really didn't have a lot of time to do it. You're doing it remotely. You're doing it in groups through little windows on your computer. And these are far from ideal situations. Based on the situation, you guys did a really good job, all of you. No one phoned it in, and that's an important thing. But the goal here is to give you concrete ideas on how to fix things. Not only these documents, we will be going back over them and you'll have another opportunity to make them look better, but also how to apply these lessons to your own writing. You're going to see how I look at writing. And if I'm pointing out something on these documents, you might want to pay extra attention on your own. So don't take this as if I'm being a mean jerk, because I'm certainly not intending it that way. I'm doing my best to be as helpful as I possibly can. And if that means I have to point out a lot of things that look wrong to me, well, take it in the spirit which it's given. Which is, I'm trying to help you figure out what you can fix and make your stuff better. Let's dive in. Okay, let's start with the art groups. First off, you're going to want to do your best to keep your resumes to one page unless it really earns the second page. A rule of thumb that people say is one page for every 5 to 7 years in the industry. I think just thinking about it as, do you earn the right to go to the second page? Are there ways to condense the information? Are there things that can get knocked out? And admittedly, I didn't tell you this when we started the assignment, but this is one of the reasons we're going over these things, so we can talk about it. First off, the titling at the top, the name, the address, and all of that is in a smaller font than the heading, so it doesn't stand out. The font itself they're using a serif font for everything, and you want to use a sans serif font for headings. That's without the little hooky things. By now you should have seen the document design video, so it's something to think about. You want there to be a visual distinction between the headings and the text, where you see it and immediately something in your brain clicks and goes, this isn't text, this is a heading. Everything is flat out on the left on the first page, except for the experience, which is indented to the left a bit more, and I'm not really sure why. This is an issue. There's all kinds of information underneath volunteer experience, but there's no information underneath the experience. And this might be because of the original document, but it's something to keep in mind when you're going over your own. You want to keep the level of information you give quite regular. You want to indent stuff underneath headings. You look at Universal Health Aid on page 2, and the little bits are indented in. That's cool. Look everywhere else, and everything's lined right up. If you indent those stuff underneath a heading in just a little bit, it's a little bit more visually distinctive. And being visually distinct is a very good thing because it means our mind doesn't have to think about these things. A lot of document design and organizing information, a lot of document design is about making the organization as explicit as possible so the reader doesn't have to think about it. When you're forcing your reader to make connections, there's a very good chance they may not see things the way you do. So that's art. It's a font. It doesn't look all that attention-grabbing. There's lots of things that could be done to make it pop a bit more. Onto the education one. This has a lot of good design features in it, but there are some issues that we need to talk about. Objective and honors and activities are over on the left on the blue side, but it's using gray text for some reason. And it's not as readable as it could be because that gray text just doesn't provide as much contrast as we need to truly see it. Where the last one had everything in a serif font, this one has everything in a sans serif font. So that's something to think about as well. There isn't the visual distinction between layers of text because it's the same font each time. Yeah, on the education side you have different colors, and that does help. But if they were different styles of fonts, there'd be a bigger distinction between them. Notice in the education column that the education heading is the same size as the Delmarva State University, Beach City, Maryland line. So it doesn't visually jump out as the heading. And why are they all caps on the left but not on the right? The top, with the name and address, is quite nice, and the color contrasts work there. I am not sure the light blue over the yellowish color on the right-hand side of the page works as good as it could, and black is going to have a lot more impact than the gray on both of these sides. You want to maximize your color contrast, so I'll be able to, again, more clearly demonstrate the organization of the piece. I appreciate that this group went for the colors and the patterns, but you really want to make sure that blue and that yellow square, rectangle I guess, line up with each other. They don't here. And that kind of jumps out a little bit. Overall, I'm very pleased with it, but there are things that can be done to make it better. But that's always going to be the case. There's always going to be room to improve. And if you keep looking at it that way, you're going to keep being able to improve stuff. Technology. On the plus side, things are indented underneath headings. There's a visual distinction between the heading and the body text. But it looks a little bit dull, doesn't it? Because everything is in a fairly traditional serif font, including the headings, so there's not a visual distinction there. There's no space between the different sections. Experience butts right up to volunteer experience. Education butts right up to objective. And that doesn't provide us the visual break we really need. And I'm afraid to say it just kind of looks dull. Keep in mind that people who are doing hiring, one of their first tasks is going to be to look for reasons to get rid of people so they can focus on fewer candidates, probably because there's going to be a stack of applications sitting waiting for them. If a resume looks dull, it might be giving the impression that this person didn't care about the design. How much of a detailed person are they? It's a thought. Transportation. This has an organization scheme, which is good, and they do have different colors for the headings, and that's also good. They're more creative in the use of the serif font. The headings are in that same font, even though they're blue. Seeing that they're blue, we know that there's a big visual distinction between that and the body text, and yeah, that's good. But it would be a bigger distinction between them if they used a sans serif font like you should. The way they have this broken into columns kind of makes this one look really, really cramped. And in order to fit everything onto the page, you notice that they went for a very, very small font. What happens if the person who's reviewing these documents has bad eyesight? Are they going to spend a lot of time looking at tiny little fonts? Maybe not. So there we go. Again, don't hate me on this one. I'm just trying to help. Don't take any of this personally. This was an assignment where you couldn't give it your full attention and had to work with people remotely, and that all makes it really difficult. But just take the comments and try to learn from them. You can apply this to your own job application submission. And I know, yeah, it's already turned in, but you've got revision opportunities in this class. So always think, I can revise this. If I change these 3 things, it might look drastically better, and it might get you a better grade. That's the hope. See you on the next video.